back to another episode of Quarantined Coaches. Today we're with former Miami assistant coach Matt Cleveland. How are you, man?
Good, man. How are you doing, Josh?
I appreciate you doing this. I'm all right. We're from the same place, but neither of us are down there anymore. Where are you at right now? Looks gorgeous.
Yeah, right now I'm in Oviedo, Florida, just north of UCF, outside of Orlando. So spent some time up here the last 6 years, and with the exception of going back down and coaching in Coral Gables. So we came back up here when all this craziness started, and here we are.
So I wanted to get into the kind of that trip to Gables because you have a really interesting, I think, baseball career that I'd like to dig into a little bit. You coached at the high school level for what, 17 years, I think total it was, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you coached at the high school level for 17 years. You had the opportunity to jump into the college game throughout your career and decided not to. You were reluctant to do so. You finally did this past year. And then, shortened season, unfortunately, 16, 17 games, whatever it was. And then you decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to jump back out of this. So it's interesting. I want to kind of run through that. So first of all, what did the high school career look like for you?
So I'm from South Florida, Fort Lauderdale. I went to Fort Lauderdale Christian, which ended up being, it's Calvary Christian now. It got swallowed up. So I had a lot of friends, grew up right in that Palm Air area. I was a little east.
That's where I grew up, Palm Air.
I remember that. I threw that in there because you mentioned Dendecker, and I knew he lived in that. In fact, I lived in that neighborhood for 12 years as an adult. So we'll get to that. But yeah, I played college ball at Nova Southeastern. I got a chance to sign a free agent with the Royals and learned a lot of stuff. So long story short, my high school basketball coach, I played basketball and baseball, also played soccer because small schools had fall soccer, but he moved to Coral Springs Christian, which had just kind of started they had K through 8 school. And I think their first graduating class, if I'm not wrong, was in 2001. So it was 2002, and he had moved there to kind of build the basketball program, so it's about 5 miles west of where we were. And I was playing pro ball, and he asked me to coach his middle school basketball team in the off season. So me and one of my guys that we used to play high school ball with were coaching that. And the second year we were doing that, I got released. I only played 2 years. The second year I didn't play much at all, but I enjoyed my time and had learned a lot. Long story short, I got released in October. December, we were coaching the middle school basketball team, having a blast, and the baseball coach got let go when we came back from Christmas. And I think they were hesitant because he was younger, my age. I was 23, and I'm not sure what the story was with him, but I asked for an interview and got it. And so that first year, the school was very small still. I believe it was 2A at the time, and that first year had like 12 players, no JV team, 5 seniors that were okay, and then some really good freshmen and an 8th grader. One of the freshmen was Matt Dendecker, who we mentioned, and he ended up only staying that year. And the 8th grader as well, Joey Hage, a kid that ended up at Douglas and ended up being a really good high school player and signed with the Cardinals. He actually came back and coached with me. But that year we were pretty competitive in our district and with a really young team. And then the next year, kind of for whatever reason, there were some kids that wanted to come. The school couldn't make it happen. And so I would say my second and third years, we were awful. And the reason I tell this story is, there's a couple great stories that come out of that. One of them, I think the second year or third year, I was at Terravella, and one of the parents that was trying to work that all the first year, this kid was at Douglas then, and he told me, and I never actually coached this kid, but he said, "You still at that small Christian school?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Well, you'll never win there." And I that's the biggest reason that I stayed in high school all through my 20s and into my mid-30s, because I just wanted to finish what we started there. And my other coaches, I was blessed as the program grew. We got great coaches, and we just had a great time at Coral Springs Christian, man. Like, there's another story that's that second or third year, there was an 8th grade kid that was maybe 80 pounds. And my catcher on my varsity team had gotten in trouble in school, and so I didn't even have a backup catcher. So I went to the JV starting catcher, and I said, "Hey, I need a catcher for this game." I think we were playing Posnack, if you remember that school. Like,
Yeah.
I need a catcher for this game. This is where we were in 2005, man. It was crazy, and and it was in PE, and he's like, "Oh, coach, I have this and that." And this little kid that was like the backup catcher and the second baseman on the JV team is like, "I'll go." And I said, "All right, let's go." "Hey, dude, you don't worry about it. All right, let's go." And that kid was Dante Rosenberg, who came up. His feet were so big, he could barely run the bases. And he was like 90 pounds. And he ended up graduating in 2008 and winning a College World Series at the University of South Carolina. So there's a lot of great stories from my time there. But
You
the key
stayed
was –
because because I was going to ask, why didn't you leave at some point? Because yeah, you were at a smaller school, and some a lot of connections into really good college coaches, especially around the state of Florida. Why did you stay? I mean, I guess you kind of answered that, like you really wanted to finish what you had started. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, there's just the timing of it. It never worked out. I mean, there were some smaller college jobs, which is really where you have to be willing to start. But I bought a condo in the Gardens in Palm Air, and like I had a mortgage. I was 26, 27, and those jobs were, hey, $20,000 a year, and I'd have to move, and I was just like, plus at that time we were starting to get a little better. And then there was the great advantage of the smaller schools is there was, a group of kids, actually had them in 5th grade PE, my first year teaching there. And they, I was able to coach them through middle school in the summer. We started a little travel team, and those guys were getting into high school, and I was just close with them, man. Like, it's all about the players, and we had built some great relationships. And that group of kids is really the group of kids that kind of put Coral Springs Christian on the map, before we even started really getting the guys that were super advanced. So that's why, man. That's why I just stayed, and I wanted to finish. I never really thought about leaving, to be honest with you. I might not have ever left if the school fell on some tough times.
Right. I do remember that.
Yeah, it was a great experience there, without a doubt.
So let's talk about the recruiting process, because you had some really good players that went on to do some really good things. So you were involved in that. I do hear a lot of families talking about how they're relying on the high school coach, or even in some what I feel is unfortunate circumstances where the high school coaches are saying, "Hey, I got this. Don't worry about anything else." To do their recruiting for them. For me, a lot of times I think, and I'm asking you this, do you tell me if I'm right or wrong on this? I think it's an unfair expectation in a lot of instances. And the reason is because high school coaches, yeah, they're coaches. They have to manage those teams, a JV team, sometimes a freshman team. A lot of times schools are in charge of, the coach is in charge of the damn concession stand, right? And tickets. And there's just so much crap going on, aside from the fact that your coach is also a husband and has a full-time job. And so from the recruiting aspect, like, the time is just maybe not there to take care of your kid like you expect them to. So I guess one and two, is that true? And then two, are families expecting more from high school coaches than what high school coaches can provide, simply from a time management standpoint?
I think every situation is different, Josh. I think that, for me, when I first started coaching, I didn't know hardly any college coaches. Only the guys I played against, would know me if I called them. The guys in the Division II conference in the state, because I played at Nova. But as you get more experience as a high school coach, you gain contacts. And then I've been, blessed enough to coach travel ball with Richie Palmer and Elite Squad when he first started, and then up here in Orlando with FTB with George Gonzalez has given me opportunity. So that really helped me make a lot of contacts. But at the same time, there are kids that you just that want to play in college, and it's hard to find them a place. And personally, if you're playing, like, for instance, the last couple of years in high school at Haggerty, if you're starting at Haggerty High School in Oviedo, like, you can play college baseball somewhere. And so for me, again, this is about the players. It's not about who can find or what. Yeah, a high school coach has a lot of different hats. And certainly, if I was a coach starting out, if I wanted to give that advice, hey, you don't know that many yeah, you need to find a way to help the kid. It can't all fall on you. I mean, nobody, when you're in the office at the University of Miami and a coach calls that you don't know, um, he might be down on the list to get back to. You're going to get back to him, but you need to find a way to help the kid. And for me, like right now, it's different. But I had a kid last year that he wanted to play. He started for me at Haggerty. He started only his senior year, and he wanted to play in college. And my advice was, I think you need to go probably out of the state. And I do know some people that have recruiting, services, and you can talk to a couple of them if you want, just like, that you do. And two of them happen to be trying to start a new one. So I let them, I introduced them to him. He picked them and they helped him find a spot. He found a Division II out of the state. I would have never been able to do that for him. And so certainly I think travel ball, high school coaches, and recruiting services need to all work together to help the kid. It can't be about who helps or what. As a high school coach, it's just finding a way, I think that's important. And you do need to understand, I think another thing you mentioned is, what do parents not understand? I mean, it's so much different now than even 10 or 12 years ago. Kids are getting recruited. Kids are like high school. High school kids are almost like college kids now, the way they're training and getting recruited very early. And parents need to understand some aspects, like, one, how developed is your kid? Like if your kid's a freshman in high school and he could be very, sound mechanically and understand the game and have a winner's mentality. But if he's still a boy, like, nobody's going to recruit him yet. They don't know what he's going to turn into. So you need to be patient, and you need to understand it's not the end of the world if other kids are committing. And you need to understand that kids can commit later. In fact, the kid from Vieira that I saw 2 years ago just committed to Vanderbilt. A catcher / outfield and arm. I think he actually might be committed as an arm. I don't even know. But there's no certain way to go about it. You just got to work every day and trust, and then understand the other part I will hit on. We talked about this, Josh, is the camps. A lot of people are asked about camps, and if a college coach calls you and says you need to get to this camp, you need to get to that camp. Otherwise, you need to go and understand what it is for. It's to get some work in front, learn some stuff from people, and then coaches that understand what they're doing, and then maybe they start recruiting you from that moment. But it doesn't mean that you're just go to the camp and get recruited. There's a lot, dude. We could talk about this forever.
Oh yeah, no doubt. You mentioned like it's different now than it was when you first started. How is a high school coach's role in recruiting nowadays different than it was 10 years ago? 15?
So I'll use Rosenberg as an example. He's a great kid, and he was a boy until he was end of his sophomore year. And so, but at that time, in 2007 and 8, guys were committing. Usually, it was still like at the end of their junior year or in that summer. Unless you were really, really advanced. Obviously, the big time guys, committed a little bit earlier, but I think it was still their junior year. So you get to watch a kid develop, and you can call and help a kid and say, hey, I've watched this kid for 3 years, and this is what he is. And he ended up going to Palm Beach State first before he went to South Carolina. And he just kept working, man. He had nothing until at the end of his senior year, but he found a way, and it wasn't this stress. You know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't feel the stress that a kid would that's a sophomore, now. I mean, they feel like they have to commit. They have to get recruited. And I just don't think that, it's fair to compare yourself if you're not fully developed. And the other part is these kids are getting recruited in 8th grade and 9th grade, and they've never even really – Josh, I think the biggest jump in baseball that you'll take is to go from – if you're playing at the highest level of varsity baseball in the state of Florida and you're on a good team, you're facing as an let's just say a hitter, you're facing 85 to 92 every day, and when you're 15, 16, 2 years before that, you were facing 75. It doesn't matter where you were at as a 13-year-old. So these kids are committing to schools, and they haven't even played really high level travel or high school baseball yet. And so it's hard to really give an opinion as a high school coach. You know, like sometimes I've had kids commit and coach will call me, hey, what do you think? To be honest with you, man, I've only seen them just in the weight room this fall. And when we do defensive individuals, you know, I can't tell you what he does in a game. Like, I can only tell you what it looks like. Yeah, he's got a chance, you know, but you got to be, as a coach, as a high school coach, this is the key. You got to be honest, because if you're not, that college guy is not going to call you back.
For sure. It's easy to get. I think it's easy to get the D1 kid committed, right? The good D1. I mean, any kid who's playing D1 where we're from in Florida is really good, really good. Yep. How equipped do you feel like you were earlier in your career, or even now, if you were to go back, to get kids connected at the Division II, Division III, the NAI level, you know, out of state, regions away? Like, do you feel like high school coaches are well equipped to do that?
I mean, I would tell you that even now I'm not. I'm just being honest. Like, if I was a high school coach next year, which we're still trying to figure out the next step, but I would need help with that. Yeah, there's a couple schools I could call because made a couple connections last year, you know, I mean, Mars Hill and, you know, some schools in Pennsylvania, but I could call some of my family's from Philly, but that's the best I can do, you know, besides cold calling. And to be honest with you, I don't think that that's really the best route to go. And like you said, that takes a lot of time. So yeah, I would need help with that, certainly, you know, if a kid was interested in that, you know.
Why'd you decide to get into college baseball after, you know, saying no for 17 years?
Well, it's not like I said no that much. I mean, there were a few opportunities, you know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to make sure that, you know, like it's not like I was constantly being asked because I'm God's gift to coach and everything. Like,
sound good here, man. I'm trying to help.
Yeah, I know you are.
Phone was ringing off.
I don't want, like, for me, it was more, you know, there might have been opportunities I would hear about, and it just wasn't time. And the Miami thing, I'm a huge Hurricanes fan, and that's not the most important reason, but that was a big
sound
reason.
Like a recruit.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. But two, you know, the biggest thing is, you know, every June I would watch the College World Series, and I would tell all of my high school players, listen, man, if you want to watch baseball, winning baseball, watch the College World Series. You know, and I remember in college at Nova, we were middle of the pack in that conference, but man, it was just the best time of my life. You know, the team camaraderie, and you know, high school was great, and building a team and building a family and culture in high school was great. But I just always, like, when I would watch the College World Series, God, that would just be such a great experience to be with a group of guys there. And I always felt like, you know, as far as instructing, that, you know, I could help a team like that. And so when that opportunity came, I mean, I remember just even last year, just sitting, remember my left leg was up on the couch and just thinking, God, I'd love to be there, you know, and I love watching the College World Series. So the opportunity came, and really through a connection. My college roommate was Coach Lopez, who, you know, allowed me to get an interview with Coach Damare, and you know, they needed an infield coach and an assistant hitting coach. I mean, that's what I do. And so, and I'm from South Florida, so it wasn't like I was going to an unknown place. And I know those guys. I know JD. I've seen them out on the recruiting. So it was comfortable, and it was definitely a roll of the dice, because, again, this is a great town up here in Oviedo, and I had a great high school job. I mean, great, best school in Seminole County, and we had a lot of players come through there, and so just thought and prayed about it, and was like, all right, let's do it. And my family actually was up here until November, and it was a little bit of a challenge personally, but I learned a lot. It was a good opportunity for sure.
So why get out after 16 games?
Well, it wasn't, you know, that it just didn't work out. I mean, I just leave it at that. Right now, you know, sometimes in life things don't work out. You can't live life with regrets. It's like you got to be willing to try new things. And so, I'm 40. I started a family late. I got a 3-year-old and a 4-month-old. And, there was some other things that you could never foreseen happening this last year. I mean, I'd be honest with you, like personally, there was a challenge this year that sometimes you just have years like that, So that's what happened. It wasn't, hey, I don't like this at all. I'm getting out of college coaching. There's some irons in the fire for me, high school and possibly college wise, but it just was one of those things.
You were your title was the volunteer assistant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, volunteer assistant isn't really, kind of volunteering, I guess, based on the pay, but you are getting paid. How do volunteer assistants get paid?
I think it's different everywhere, but I think it's the same a lot. Obviously at the Division I level, they're getting paid. I believe most of them are getting paid through camps. And so, I can only speak for UM, but I got paid, from the camp account. Miami did 6 weeks of youth camps, which is, that's a thing, camps aren't going to happen this summer, or there's going to be very little camps. And so I think that's going to put a stress on a lot of coaches and how they're going to pay their volunteers, and a lot of volunteer coaches, because there's only 3 coaches. We haven't been able to get that 4th coach or the 3rd paid assistant. So I got paid from that camp account, and I got paid enough to make a living. And I think a lot of coaches are doing that, getting some more like experienced guys. It used to be like a grad assistant that, so
this virus is gonna kill those coaches, right? I mean, it's gonna be the end of volunteer coaches if they can't get camp money.
I think coaches are going to have to get college coaches might have to get like a little bit. What's the word I'm looking for?
Creative.
They're going to have to find ways. They're going to have to get creative. That's why. Thanks, Josh. But they're going to have to get creative, just like high school coaches do, man. You're just going to have to find a way, because the bottom line is we all know how it works with the amount of coaches in college baseball. And
what's the main jobs, roles of volunteer assistants? Like, is it how different is it than being an assistant coach?
It's really no different. At least for me, it wasn't. We all had different jobs. Obviously, the head coach has his job and what he's going to do, and but I was made to be. I mean, personally, as a coach, Gino said, "Here, go coach the infielders," and he let me go coach the infielders, and we had a great time with them. And I assisted Lopes on the hitting, and my other jobs were to help with recruiting. There was some paperwork and stuff like that, and to help Lopes with that, and if maybe make some connections up here in Central Florida, and then daily, one of my job along with Jonathan Anderson was to kind of set up the field. One thing that was different in college for sure was, you got the time constraints, and we want to use all that time. So we don't want to waste time setting up the field. So we had the field set up every day, whether it was for early work or whatever. And so that was something that was new, just because in high school it was like, all right, set it up for BP. And
right.
Lopes was very detailed, and hey, we're going to do, which we were too in high school for BP, but we had sometimes 3 machines out on the field, which would take a while, to set up. So that was something that we did every day, but we made it fun, man. Hung out with the grounds guys and made it fun.
You had to carve out 40 minutes just to set up the field. So what is it like coaching infielders at the college level versus the high school level?
Really, it's no different. It might have been a little easier if I was going to make a comparison, just because I will say this, man, the guys at Miami were great. They were super coachable. They want to get better. They understand, what their next step is when they're at that level. And they, right from the start, we established some routines, and which I'm big on. If I'm going to be honest, coaching infielders, you gotta bring it every day, and it's about every rep, the way we throw, the way we work. So, but the actual coaching isn't different. In high school, maybe you catch a kid that has had some training and and thinks he knows, and he's still young, a little more immature, and it might take a little while longer, but eventually, if you can do it right and let them fail and bring them along, the actual instruction isn't much different, at least for me. I tried to coach, a lot of the stuff that I learned in pro ball is what I try to bring, and I'm still learning, trying to keep learning. I add new stuff every year to what we do with the infielders, but at Miami, it was like I got there and they were like ready to go to work.
Well, I mean, even as much as you know about the game, as much as you've been around the game, essentially you're working with kids for 17 years that are learning how to play the game. In Miami, hell, that's damn near a pro team right there. Like, was there an adjustment for you personally going from, teaching JV and kids transitioning to varsity and some varsity studs, but not a roster of 30 of them like Miami has?
Right. No, I'd be honest with you. For me, it wasn't any different, and that might be a credit to the guys at Miami. You know what I'm saying? We just went out and went to work. I mean, obviously, for them, some of them are further along, for sure. There's no doubt about that. But it still is the same basic stuff when you're coaching, and some of them still had some of the same adjustments to make. They're just more athletic and more gifted, and maybe that one thing you're doing wrong with your approach or your footwork is you're going to be able to make up for that somehow. That extra 10 times out of 1,000 that the high school kid can't. But if you want to be a big league infielder, you need to make 975 out of 1,000, routine plays. This is what you've got to be able to do. And so they bought in, and really, man, they were so coachable. I can't say that enough. That group of guys, I'll miss those guys. They were awesome.
So if you want to play infield at Miami, you need to be coachable. You need to have a strong enough arm to make up for a mistake every now and then. And what else? What are some of the other key characteristics to be an infielder?
I mean, if you're going to be a good infielder, it starts every day when you cross the line and once you're done stretching, and what really starts with the stretch. But I mean, that's what I told them. I mean, it's catch and throw. When a ball's hit to you as an infielder, nobody's blocking for you. Nobody's setting a pick for you. Like that's why I love baseball. It's an individual game. You have to catch the ball, and then you have to throw the ball. And obviously there's a lot of more intricacies in between, but and the first baseman has to catch the ball. It's the same thing with every part of this game. It's a catch and throw game. So first thing we did the first day, was, hey, we got to throw this way. We got to emulate infield footwork right from the start. As soon as you get up off your knee, because we had our routine at Miami, which was a lot like what we did at Haggerty. We gotta do this. We got to do that, and it has to be done every day. And so the throwing, and then we had some glove work routines, a lot like what Ron Washington does with his bat, but we would just have the guys throw it to them. And I'm like, this needs to be done. It takes 3 minutes. It needs to be done right every day. And to me, it starts right there. You put it in their hands, and then you watch them. But at both levels, you just got to be there. Hey, no, let's do this. Let's do that. And then when they do make a mistake, whether you're doing a drill where you're rolling the ball to them, or they make a bad throw, or we had a drill where we'd hit it off the tee and we'd have times, and the tee gives more realistic spin than a fungo. For me, when they made a mistake, I want them to know why. All right, I didn't get around this ball, or I fielded it off the wrong foot, and the quicker they can give you that answer, the quicker they're on their way to being a great infielder. Because whether you're a hitter or an infielder or a pitcher or whatever, in this game, the best players make the quickest adjustments. Everybody gets in little slumps, funks, makes a mistake. You can't get pissed at yourself. You can't get bitter. You got to get better. And that comes where it comes here. You can't get emotional. All right, what did I do wrong? Now let's fix it. And so that was for me, is putting it in their hands, establishing routines, and then helping them along with it. And if you do it every day, and that's the hard part, because this game's a grind.
What about – go ahead. I'm sorry.
If you do it every day, you're going to be on your way to being a great infielder. Not good, great. That should be the goal. So that's it.
What about hitting? Hitting surely has to look different, coaching hitting at a high school and a college level, no?
Yeah, definitely. But to be honest with you, like that was like I didn't write practice plans or anything like that at Miami. I was just coming alongside Lopes, and as an assistant, and this was one thing I wanted to make sure I did there. I was the assistant hitting coach. You know, in high school, I would always tell my assistants, like, look, if you see something and I'm the infield coach, come to me, not because of my ego, because we don't want to confuse the guy. So in with Lopes, I didn't really have to do with his routines, but coaching the guys is way different, and the stuff is way different. So it's more about preparing them to see the stuff that they're going to see, the video work. You know, hey, we're going to see this guy from Florida. This is what he throws. The scouting reports. That's a lot different than in high school. I think that's a huge point. You know, in high school, when my teams when we started getting good, we would go watch a team and get a scouting report, you know, and then we would just play terrible. And so I got to the point where I was
like it mattered. I was the same way at Lincoln.
Right. I just got to the point where I was like,
I remember I drove 2 hours away to Gainesville to scout the team we were going to play in the regional semifinal. And and eventually I'm like, what am I doing? Like, their center fielder's going to Florida State. Their third baseman's going to Florida. That's the end of the scouting report.
Yeah, I mean, you do need to know some stuff. Like when we would get to the playoffs, certainly we would get some information if we hadn't seen a team. But
just get that information.
A scouting report where you're focusing on the other team instead of your team. That's what happens. They're young. See, that's a big difference. And they're young, and so they're focused on the other team instead of focusing on the game. You're playing the game. But you know, when you get to the ACC and you're facing the guys that they're facing at Miami, you need to know everything. You need to find every little piece of edge that you can, you know, to win that game, to win that at bat, you know, to win that inning. And so the scouting report was big. That's another thing that my big responsibility during the season, we only had 16 games, but was to type up the scouting report and, you know, that Lopes would give and make sure that we could read it off and percentages and just stuff like that, which is a big difference from high school and college, you know, the preparation.
So now you are in a transition mode, which is something a lot of college guys go through. And I mean, you know, you're, like you said, you're 40 years old, you started a family like what is this transition process like? You know, being a college coach in transition with a family, you know, are you stressed out?
Maybe a little, man, but I gotta be honest with you, man. Just like I know that, you know, I got faith that in Jesus Christ. I know that God will work it out, man. Certainly, it didn't necessarily, you know, this isn't where any of us thought we would be a year ago, you know. But what I've been trying to do is focus on the positive. I've spent 6-7 weeks, and the weather's been beautiful up here with my kid, who I didn't see for 3 months in the fall, with my 3-year-old son. I painted a little field out here, and he hits and runs the bases and plays cars. And so, yeah, it's a little stressful thinking next year, but I believe that, you know, I'll be able to find a job and coach and do what I love to do. Where that's at, like, I can't worry too much about that right now. Nobody's really doing anything, you know. I mean, hopefully in the next month people will start interviewing and looking and planning, but we're still just barely getting that ball rolling the other way with this whole COVID-19 stuff. So, yeah, it's a little stressful, but I've also I worked hard for, you know, the last 4 or 5 years straight, like summer, travel ball, Haggerty, right down to Miami. So I've kind of enjoyed a little time to chill a little bit too. You know, I'm trying to get back into it though.
But like, you know, and I'm not asking necessarily about you personally, you know, I'm just in general, like, this is a huge part of the coaching industry and the coaching in trying to have a career in coaching are these transition phases. Now, you're obviously transitioning during a very weird year, an unprecedented year, but like, what are the things that go into this transition process?
I think my situation might be unique. I can speak for the transition to Miami. Like, let's just say I was a college coach. I mean, one thing, you know, people don't understand when they're wearing these guys out in any sport as a college coach is the amount of time these guys put in. I mean, Coach Lopez, our recruiting coordinator, this guy's one of the hardest working people I've ever seen, if not the hardest working person I've ever seen. And I mean, I felt I worked hard, and that guy puts me to shame. And the fact of the sacrifice that their families have to make, especially in a time of transition. Like for me, and this happens to probably hundreds of guys a year. It was the beginning of August, and I was in Erie, Pennsylvania, with my wife's family at a cookout when I found out I got the job. And Gino was like, "When can you be there?" And I said, "It was August 1st." I said, "I can be there Monday," which was August 5th. So we were flying home the next day, and we flew home, and I packed a couple bags, and I went and stayed in Fort Lauderdale, which was a long drive, for like 6 weeks, and then found a place to live. And I didn't see my family for the better part of 3 months. In fact, my daughter was born. I didn't even get this. We had planned on her calling me because the son took 14 hours to come, and she took 2.5. So I was in the car when she was born, which was, it sucked, but my wife's cool. So she didn't hold it against me.
Must be cool if she's still.
Yeah, she is. She's really cool. She's awesome. So the sacrifices that the families make with these college guys, and I mean, I was in Miami. I was in Fort Lauderdale with a buddy for 6 weeks, driving sometimes 2 hours, and then into Miami without my family, and unpacking a place for about eight weeks by myself before they came down. And I think that happens a lot, man. And these guys work really hard. College coaches work hard. They transition a lot. They move around a lot. And, it's definitely a sacrifice, but I would do it again, no doubt. But that happens a lot. And that's not something that a lot of families are willing to do, so these guys are humans. They work hard, and it's cutthroat. We all know that. You got to win. You got to find a way to improve your players. But the transition time is definitely interesting or stressful. This is less stressful right now, actually.
Yeah. I'm a therapist. This whole quarantine for coaches, I'm here to let everybody talk and talk baseball. That's what I'm here for, is to be an outlet. Is there anything you learned going into the college game that you didn't know before? I mean, as working for, being with TV, being with Richie, being at a good, high school team, we think we have it all figured out. We think we understand the whole system, right? Is that the case? Did you really understand it all from there, or what did you learn about college baseball that you didn't realize before?
I definitely learned a lot too. About the actual game of baseball, I picked up some good stuff from Lopes and learned some stuff from watching JD and Gino. But and that was the cool part about the actual whole level. I don't think people truly understand that are high school guys. In fact, I find myself talking to guys that were still in high school baseball and hearing them make comments that I used to make, and then I would be like, bro, you don't understand.
What?
I mean, just first of all, I used to say this, well, these guys got to be prepared if they're going to go play Division I baseball, for the time. And, you see the TCU video of them in the morning running on the field. I had a kid go to Flagler, and his dad would tell me, the amount of time they took. It's anywhere now, but our guys, man, like you have to be prepared to become a man or be a man when you get there at that level. There's no messing around. I mean, you're getting up, to lift, you're going to class, you're coming, there's a lot of advantages too. You got food for you every day, but then you're going right out and getting your work in before we get our work in, and you're busting your tail, and then you're going to do homework. I mean, these guys, 6 days a week, most of the year, there's not a lot of time to do what a lot of other kids are doing at that age. I'll leave it at that. So I don't think the kids or families, I don't think all of them completely understand the sacrifice that the kids make for the love of the game to be a part of at a program like the University of Miami. I mean, in high school, I used to tell my kids, we're going to work as hard. I'm going to run it like a college program. So when you get there, you're ready. And that was always my goal. I would try to do that. And I certainly think we did our best with our coaching staff and what we could do, but it doesn't prepare them. It just doesn't. I mean, when you're a senior in high school, like at Haggerty, my guys, some of my guys would be, with the virtual stuff and stuff now, they would go to school for like 1.5 hours, go do a virtual class, take a nap, come to practice. There's just not a lot of time for that for these guys. So I definitely learned that. I definitely learned the preparation and the scouting reports, which, you know, I thought was awesome. I thought it was great to get into the intricacies even more. I always loved that stuff, but you just don't need it as much in high school. And definitely learned, you know, also just like, this will be the last thing that I think is a big difference. Is, in high school, for me, I was the strength coach. I was the, you know, not the trainer, but I was a strength coach. I was the fundraiser. I was this, I was that. And so to organize when we were going to do stuff was easy. And you only really have like maybe 4 or 5 POs. When you have a college team, you really have 2 separate teams, you know, like it's almost like offense and defense in football. And so just organizing the intricacies of how, you know, JD would organize the pitchers and when they did their schedule, which we always did as well in high school, but and then the strength and then the training room and when guys got out of class, you know, because it wasn't all at the same time. It really is like a little organization that, and you have to be super organized, which I think we were down there. They did a great job of that. But just sitting in the meetings and listening to all the options of this kid's going to go to training here and he gets out of class at this time and then he has this and this and this. And, you know, all right, this bullpen is this day. I got, you know, all of that leading into a practice plan. There's a lot more to put together than just me sitting in front of my computer and saying, all right, we haven't done first and third. We're going to do mass ground balls.
Right.
You know, because everybody's going to be there at the same time. You know, it's just more, there's just way more that goes into it on both sides. That's why it's the ACC and the other one's the FHSAA. You know?
Well, I find this to be super insightful. That was really cool. So thanks for sharing with us, Coach Cleveland, and good luck, man. Good luck. I hope you find something that makes you happy here soon.
Oh, we will. We will. It'll be good too. And I look forward to the next step. And I hope you know, you continue to do what you're doing. And thanks for what you're doing. And have a great day. And we'll be talking to you soon.